So some people are bickering back and forth as to whether or not the Democrats' spending plan for the federal government would include funding for illegal immigrants. Now, I went and read the fine print for the White House and GOP sourcing for this claim, and I was kind of surprised by what I found, and I'll explain why I was surprised. So here's the memo. It's called Democrat Plan to Fund Healthcare for Illegal Immigrants. The Working Families Tax Cut Act, signed into law by President Trump, contains the most important America First healthcare reforms ever enacted. The policies represent a comprehensive effort to address waste, fraud, and abuse to strengthen the healthcare system for the most vulnerable Americans, ensuring that taxpayer dollars are focused on American citizens and do not subsidize healthcare for illegal immigrants. Democrats are demanding these reforms be repealed as a condition of keeping the government open for 4 weeks. This would result in federal government spending nearly $200 billion on healthcare for illegal immigrants and non-citizens over the next decade, nearly enough to fund the entire children's health insurance program over the same period, all while repealing reforms that strengthen care for the most vulnerable Americans. By the way, I do want to make an aside here. That some of this argumentation, I'm a Republican as well. I lean conservative. I have to admit, some of this argumentation is BS, I will say, because when Republicans or Democrats or anyone in the government, but especially the federal government who loves to borrow money, says, "Oh man, that's a waste. That's so much money, dude, to spend on this." Man, I just don't know if we can afford all of that. I have to check the budget. I have to penny pinch. I have to see where we can find that extra $200 or $300 billion. That's all just fake. Really, they just don't want to spend money on that thing. Because look, hold on. Let me see. What was the last time we didn't have a deficit? I'll ask my Amazon device. And I'll ask Google. Google always gives me better answers. But I like to be courteous to my little Amazon device over there. And let me turn it up as well, because I had it turned down because it is a little loud, to be fair. Hey Ziggy, when was the last time the governments of the United States of America did not have a deficit?
Sorry, I don't have an answer for that.
What did I tell you? Hey Ziggy, when was the last time the federal government did not have a deficit?
I don't know.
See, Alexa doesn't know. Hey Google,
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
when was the last time the federal government of the United States of America did not have a deficit?
The last time the federal government of the United States did not have a deficit, meaning it had a budget surplus, was in fiscal year 2001.
2001? Bruh. So, not since the terrorists knocked down the Twin Towers have we had a government surplus. So, people saying, oh, can we afford that? Can we not afford that? You're borrowing money every single year. What do you mean you can't afford it? What do you mean is $200 billion too much to add to the trillions of dollars in debt you're putting us into each year? Give me a break. So recognize that when you see arguments about whether or not we can fund something. I actually agree that, we shouldn't be spending more than we're making. But when you're borrowing a ridiculous amount of money anyways, $200 billion is like a drop in the ocean compared to all of the money that you're spending, right? Let's keep reading, because we did get a little bit off topic there, didn't we? Let's keep reading because we got off topic. Sorry. This memorandum outlines the provisions in the WFTCA that end taxpayer funding for the healthcare of illegal immigrants and non-citizens, which Democrats are demanding to repeal. Limiting federal healthcare benefits for illegal immigrants and non-citizens. So I think this is the section that caught my eye. The WFTCA takes a comprehensive approach to aligning eligibility requirements across federal healthcare programs to ensure taxpayer dollars are not subsidized healthcare for non-citizens, including illegal immigrants. Specifically, the law limits eligibility under Medicaid, Medicare, and Obamacare to citizens of the United States, legal permanent residents, limited categories of individuals granted legal status, and individuals lawfully in the United States in accordance with the Compact of Free Association. These provisions assure that Medicaid cannot be used in conjunction with abuses of the immigration system, like the Biden administration's misuse of the parole and asylum processes to supplement radical open borders policies and serve as a magnet for illegal immigration into the United States. Repealing these eligibility limitations would increase federal spending by more than $102 billion over the next decade and leave the United States vulnerable to illegal immigration. Okay, here's the big part. Here's the big part. Ending enhanced funding for emergency care provided to illegal immigrants. Under the WFTCA, states will no longer be able to claim enhanced federal funding for reimbursing hospitals that prefer emergency care services to illegal immigrants beginning on October 1st, 2026. Now, to me, this is rather interesting. This is rather interesting because I'm a Republican. I'm conservative, but I actually kind of support this because, look, hospitals at the moment have this rule where it's like if you've got someone who, needs emergency surgery or emergency care, the hospital has to provide that surgery. But then you've got the problem of who pays for that healthcare. That's something they figure out later, right? Sometimes they pay out of pocket. Sometimes they pay through the healthcare insurance program. Sometimes the federal government pays for it. This argument and that debate, negotiation is what that line is all about. If an illegal immigrant comes into a hospital and they need healthcare, let's say they got, shot in the toe or whatever, and they need surgery or else they may die of sepsis, right? I think that might be the case, especially if you're wearing toes outside. If you're not wearing shoes, you're outside in the dirt, in the woods. Yeah, you might get sepsis. Anyways, so when that person gets their health care, you've got the question of, well, who's going to pay for the health care? So I think what this stipulated was what before the WFTCA, that healthcare would be reimbursed by the federal government. Post WFTCA, that healthcare would not be reimbursed by the federal government. So I'm supporting this being funded by the federal government so long as it's limited to emergency care. You know why? It's because I think that illegal immigrant who is facing a life-threatening situation should have the care that they need. And when it comes to who funds it, what are you going to ask the illegal immigrant to pay for it? They're not going to be able to afford that, most likely, especially if you're deporting them right after this, right? Because they're displaced. They'll have to find a new job. They probably won't be paid back home as much as they're getting paid here. Is the insurance gonna cover them? No, because you can't be covered under insurance if you're an illegal immigrant. So, it's the only real solution, I think, to getting this funded is actually having the federal government cover it. So I actually am on board with the Democrats proposal here to fund this healthcare because I think it's rather important. I just don't think that illegal immigrants should be left to bleed out and die, or citizens be left to bleed out to die if hospitals can't verify that they're citizens, or healthcare is indiscriminately offering healthcare but not being able to afford the cost of all that care. So that would force either healthcare costs to skyrocket, or it could force hospitals to shut down, I'd imagine. None of those things are things I want to see in the world. So I do actually support this policy. And there are other things here as well. But that's kind of the big one So like there's the California loophole. Says California utilized an egregious loophole since employed by several other states to draw down federal matching funds used to provide Medicaid benefits. So basically giving Medicaid to illegals. I'm glad that loophole is getting filled up. But yeah, that's like the big thing. Because, you know, when I was like, what? Healthcare for illegals? How's that legal? Turns out it's not exactly legal. But I do think that, you know, emergency care should certainly be reimbursed because I don't want illegals just bleeding out and dying in the street. That's not what I want to see in the world.